Your performance at your USCIS interview is crucial to winning your asylum case. You may have solid facts, you may truly deserve asylum, but if you don't handle the questions at your interview well, then you probably won't be successful. In this video, I'm going to provide you with 13 concrete tips for how to answer questions at your asylum interview so that you can win your case. I'm Brian Manning, and I used to be an asylum officer with the government, but now, as an asylum lawyer, I help immigrants all over the country secure their future in America through asylum. All right, tip number 1, listen carefully to the questions and respond directly. Ensure that you understand the question being asked and respond directly. If you're unclear, you should seek clarification. And try not to offer long, unrelated answers. Instead, provide a direct response that addresses the question being asked. For instance, if you're asked, on how many separate occasions have you been physically harmed in your country? Avoid a lengthy answer that does not squarely answer that question. Instead, respond with something like, I've been physically attacked 4 times, and I've also been threatened and harassed on numerous occasions. Now, this answer is both direct and informative. Next, tip number 2, be honest and straightforward. Never tell the officer something just because you think they expect to hear it or because you think it may help your case. You've got to tell the truth, and you should not exaggerate. If you don't know the answer, it's perfectly acceptable to say, I don't know, or I can't remember. If you're uncertain but have an idea, express that you're unsure but provide your best guess. For example, if you're asked about instances of physical harm and you've had 3 bad attacks but you're uncertain if being shoved counts, then you could answer with something like, I've suffered 3 serious attacks and been shoved on 2 additional occasions. You see, this response addresses the question without giving a definitive number. And that brings us to tip number 3, provide estimates if necessary. If you can't provide a specific number or a detail the officer is asking about, then offer an estimate and inform the officer that you are in fact estimating. For example, if you've received many threatening calls, you could say, I've received so many threatening calls that I can't really keep track of them. I believe there have been at least 20, but that's an estimate. Okay, tip number 4, be clear about your memory. When recalling specific words or incidents, it's okay to admit that you don't remember the exact words or details. Describe what you can remember and use phrases like, or words to that effect, to indicate that you might not be quoting verbatim. This approach affords flexibility if you recall more details later without appearing inconsistent. If you just can't remember at all, it's fine to say, I don't remember. All right, tip number 5 is really important as it's something that a lot of people mess up. Don't focus on country conditions or background information. Asylum officers conduct their own research on country conditions, so avoid lengthy answers about your country's background. For instance, if you're asked, who are you afraid of in your country? Avoid a lengthy explanation about your country's political climate. Instead, provide a direct answer like, I'm afraid of the secret police. You see, it's really frustrating for the officer when an applicant tries to provide a bunch of context or background information because the officer just wants you to focus on you and the details specific to your situation. Okay, on to tip number 6. You can and sometimes should answer yes or no questions with more than just a yes or no. Sure, it's fine to just give a one-word answer if that's what's required to address the question, but you may want to add a bit more, and there are times when you should do so. For example, if you're asked whether you were a member of a political party and you were heavily involved but not a formal member, you could respond with, well, I wasn't a formal member, but I actively supported and participated in the party's activities. You see, that way, you're answering the question in a way that gives the officer the information that they sought, but you're also adding a tiny bit more that is, in fact, relevant to your case. If you had just said no, the officer might have thought that you had no political involvement at all, when you in fact did. So it's important to get that information out there. Next up, tip number 7, trust in your preparation. Take time to prepare for your interview by reviewing your asylum application and any supporting documents, including your written declaration. This will help you become familiar with the information that you provided and ensure consistency in your responses at your interview. When it comes time for your interview, you'll perform better knowing that you did your best to prepare. Okay, tip number 8, stay calm and composed. It's normal to feel nervous during an interview, especially when you're discussing sensitive topics, but you've got to try to remain calm. Staying calm and composed will help you answer questions more effectively. Take deep breaths and focus on the question being asked. Don't dwell on past answers that you gave or worry about questions that might come next. Just take it one question at a time. If you do feel overwhelmed or emotional, request a brief pause to collect yourself before continuing. Moving right along, we're at tip number 9. Explain any inconsistencies. Asylum officers pay close attention to inconsistencies in your application, statements, and supporting documents. If inconsistencies arise during the interview, address them openly and provide an explanation. For example, if you previously stated that you were attacked on a specific date, but now you remember it happened a week later, well, clarify the discrepancy and explain the reason for the change in your answer. And that brings us to tip number 10. Avoid exaggeration. While it's important to describe your experiences and your fears accurately, avoid exaggerating or fabricating details. Asylum officers are trained to identify inconsistencies and exaggerations, which can jeopardize your credibility. So stick to the facts and provide truthful, accurate information. Next up is tip number 11. Show respect to the asylum officer. Treat the officer with respect throughout the interview. Address them with appropriate titles, maintain eye contact, and listen carefully to their questions. Even if you disagree with something they say or feel that they're not understanding your situation or not being very empathetic, try to remain respectful and polite. Okay, we're at tip number 12. Be prepared to discuss sensitive issues. Asylum interviews often require discussing sensitive or traumatic events. Try to prepare yourself mentally for this and be willing to answer questions honestly and openly. And with that, we're to our last tip, number 13. Be patient and flexible. Asylum interviews can be lengthy and they may require multiple sessions. So try to be patient and flexible, understanding that the process may take time. If your interview gets rescheduled or continued on another day, try to maintain a positive attitude and focus on the end goal. You must also understand that you're not in control at your interview. The officer is going to conduct the interview as they see fit, and you've just got to accept this. Be flexible and try to go with the flow. Performing well in an asylum interview is crucial to the success of your application. By following these tips and adequately preparing for the interview, well, you can improve your chances of securing asylum. If you're ready to take the next step and get individualized help with your asylum case, then call my office today. That number is 713-352-1593. And remember, we help people all over the country, so it doesn't matter where you are. Call us now to schedule an asylum strategy session so that we can help you secure your future in America through asylum. Again, I'm Brian Manning, and it's truly an honor to serve you in your asylum journey.